Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this July 25th, 2022 meeting of the Center Region Council of Governments General Forum. I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, staff will take a roll call of all members to make sure everyone can hear and be heard.
Mr. Balachandran. Mr. Barlow.
Here.
Ms. Bering. Ms. Engman. Ms. Krishnakudi.
Here.
Mr. Liscombe.
Here.
Mr. Marshall. Mr. Benier is not able to join us. Mr. Best.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Ms. Stilson.
Here.
Mr. Takak.
Here.
Ms. Zadini.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland is unable to join us. Ms. Williams. Mr. Beck. Ms. Hartle.
Here.
Ms. Hoover.
Here.
Mr. Piper.
Here.
Mr. Cervello.
Here.
Mr. Graham. Mr. Hammeister.
Here.
Mr. Harding.
Here.
Mr. Lord.
Here.
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Abrams.
Here.
Mr. Magruder.
Here.
Ms. Robb.
Here.
Mr. Trevino. And logging. Ms. Bering, can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Sorry. Apologies.
Mr. Trevino?
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Again, welcome. First item would be public comment for anything not on this evening's agenda. Seeing nor hearing none, we move to introduction. And this evening we are very pleased to welcome Roseanne Hoover from Half Moon Township and Nalini, say it, Jesse.
Nalini Krishnakudi from State College, Berlin.
Very good. Welcome. We look forward to doing great things with you. At this point, we have recognitions, and we're going to turn this over to Miss Betsy Whitman.
Miss Pam Robb. Not Pam Robb. Too many great Pams in my life, I'm sorry. So I'm here tonight to present an award to some very deserving people and organizations. It is from Solar United Neighbors. That is the organization that the Climate Action Sustainability Group worked with. Actually, it was Pam Adams as the Sustainability Director who worked directly with that. And I had some interactions with them. Basically, they helped residents in Center County learn about solar energy, rooftop energy. And they did that by helping establish a co-op. As the name suggests, people coming together have a little more bargaining power when it comes to making a purchase. And that was the whole idea behind the co-op. This co-op actually is modeled, or not modeled, it is an outgrowth of the very first co-op, which happened in Washington, D.C., in one of the city blocks, Anacostia. And two young middle school students decided that they wanted solar on their house. And the mother of one of them said, I don't think so. They didn't take no for an answer, and the rest is the history that we now see with Solar United Neighbors that not only got launched in this Anacostia, Washington, D.C. co-op, but then went on to grow across several states in the nation. So there's a chapter of Solar United Neighbors, or SUN, in Pennsylvania. The director, Henry McKay, reached out to Pam and said, we'd like to form a solar cooperative in Center County. We just happened to be starting the climate action and sustainability. I don't know how he knew that it worked out perfectly. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what they do. They come into an area, they do a lot of outreach. There are a number of people who are partners, Patton Township, College, I'm going to forget some of the people who are partners. COG was a partner. And by that, we mean that we simply did some outreach at our meetings and on our websites and so on. And COG did the same. We put up yard signs. We got people who are interested. I'm going to say there were about 120 people in the co-op. Pam is going to correct me because she's got all the little stats right there. Of the 120 or so people who decided they would join the co-op, 17, I believe, families decided to go with solar for their particular housetop. The process of getting there was that this co-op presented through video webinars a sort of hour-long Solar 101. So it's what the questions that all of us want to know, but are a little bit overwhelmed about asking and not even knowing where to start. You go to one solar company or another. So Solar United Neighbors is a vendor-neutral co-op and was able to present the Solar 101 without any pretense of you have to buy from me and no pressure. The next step was to help a subgroup of this entire co-op group, of which there are about 120 people, a subgroup who was interested in reviewing requests for proposals that came in. SUN helped the co-op send out requests for proposals. We sent out 4, or they received 4, and then this smaller subgroup analyzed for various factors. Do you want it to be local? Do you want a high warranty? Do you want quality of factors? Do you want things to be made in the US? Whatever the factors were. I wasn't involved with that, so I can't tell you the details. But in any event, the specs came in, and of course the prices. We chose a vendor, and then we went with we went ahead with solar. And I use the we because my husband and I actually did decide to do it. And I will say that we did this part of combination of the information, part of match of our values. It's going to pay off in 8 or 9 years. We don't know if we're going to be in the house for 8 or 9 years, but we realized that we could do this. Okay? And I will actually mention that house values do go up according to Zillow. Anyway, there have been a couple of studies that indicate there's either 4%, 4 to 5%, depending on where you are. So I think I've said all about some that I want to say. And I would like to, on behalf of Solar United Neighbors, present to the Center Region Council of Government, that would be y'all, the Solar Champion Award. This certificate is awarded to COG for accelerating the adoption of rooftop solar. So if you could accept that on behalf of COG. And then, surprise, surprise, there's another certificate for Pam Adams, Solar Founder. This certificate is awarded to Pam Adams for being there from the very beginning as one of the original founders of the Center County Solar Co-op. So, thank you.
All right, and then I am just quickly going to give you some facts about the co-op that was here in Center County. It was 144 residents that were educated on solar. There were 17 new solar installations. That's 161 kilowatts of solar, new solar in the region. And it equates to 500,000 in household energy savings. And that's 2,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions before you. So I just want to give those facts. And then I want to present Betsy, the solar evangelist. And she can speak the language, and she's out there talking about it. And that's for spreading the good news about solar far and wide through media appearances and word of mouth.
Excellent. Congratulations, Pam. Congratulations, Betsy. Congratulations, COG. Does any member have any potential new agenda item to add to this evening's agenda? Seeing or hearing none, we move to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of the minutes from our April 25th, 2022 meeting, the designation for the 2022 trick-or-treat night as Monday, October 31st, the 2023 COG program plan, which would be accept and refer to the municipalities for review and comments to be back to the executive director by 8 a.m. Thursday, August 18th. We have the 2023 to 2027 COG capital improvement plan, also to be referred to the municipalities, with comments also due back by 8 a.m. Thursday, August 18th. Does anybody wish any of those items pulled? Yes.
Just the CIP, and here's a note for me, just being on, and just the new use of the consent agenda. I still have not, I think, fully understood the way that we utilize it. I thought by us putting it on the consent agenda, it came onto this agenda as a regular agenda item. So I'm sorry, I would have pulled it, but I only just have 5 questions.
Okay,
So
very good.
I think that's a pull as opposed to a pause.
I agree. If
Okay.
more than a clarification, then yes.
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Any other items? Anybody have any of the other items? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve CA1, CA2, and CA3.
I think it's under CIP, so sometimes the one, Chair.
Sure.
So moved, Rich.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Elliot, were you moving the motion or seconding?
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. CA4. Laura, please.
Yep, thank you so much, Chair and General Forum. Just, some of these may be deferred, and I'd be glad, I just wanted to present them to the whole body, right, really as quickly as I can. One is, I didn't find any definition of capital assets, and I'll give an example based on what we have in our operating budget, and it may be coming in the budget, but nonetheless, I'm not gonna keep qualifying each one of my questions. So a definition of capital assets, similar to something like, capital assets are currently defined as assets with an expected life service of more than 1 year and a minimum cost of $2,500. So that's the Ferguson Township definition. I couldn't find a similar concise statement just like that. I'm sure it's there and I just couldn't find it. Thank you.
Okay.
Second, and this may be a budgetary question, but I'll put it on the table now moving forward. Definition of enterprise fund versus operating. Then is there a capital to operating ratio that we could see over time, like when I mean over time, 23 to 27, so working backwards, obviously, because that's where we have the data, is there such a thing as a capital to operating ratio that we typically see? And I would think by agency, that would be something looked at by agency. Do we have that? Have we done? Here's a detail question, just upcoming again. I know it's gonna be asked. History of the Oak Hall parking lot investment. That's erosion, it's gravel, it's a hill, it's gullied. I've advocated for pavement, it's a higher capital investment. We keep deferring for gravel. I'd like to put on the table, if it hasn't been, that's something that we should think about. I don't know the history, I don't know the plan. If we could get that on the table to be discussed, or at least get the history and what the thought is for the future. I also sent a question, what is in the master plan for it? I think it's supposed to be paved, maybe it's supposed to be gravel, I don't know. That's a detailed question. Then 2 larger kind of overall questions. Is there a place, I thank you, the future staffing section is a great start, first try, and I really appreciate that. And now, as I mentioned in finance, I'm trying to get like an understanding of the additional cost, like the benefits and whatnot, that kind of thing. But I also realized that I didn't know where in the current document, I don't think it's CIP, so I apologize if this is actually program plan or budget. Where's the current document of just existing staffing costs in a one table shot? So I saw in parks, it's in the budget through each section, it's broken out, which is great. Is there a snapshot page? It's so helpful for us moving forward. And then I think last one, and that's budgetary, but it relates to capital costs. So where do revenues go from like pools, regional park rentals, Millbrook Marsh, which has really nice revenues, it's great, and facility revenues? Do they go into, it looks like they're going into operating. Is there a rule for why they're not going into capital? And then that was it. So I think that's gonna be it for.
Okay, I counted 6. I just want to
Okay,
confirm
it
that.
could be 6.
Okay.
It
very
could
good.
be 6.
Good.
Thank you. And
Uh,
that's, you don't even have to respond at all because they're very big, I know.
Okay, but we've got our expert on there.
Yep, if anybody
Joe,
cares to.
from what I heard, I have capital assets definition. Is that in the CIP anywhere?
Joe Vigilone, COG Finance Director. It did not make this year's CIP. I do have the definition right up on my screen. I tried to pull things up as the questions were being asked. And you can see here's the definition for a capital asset. It's defined as a piece of equipment or investment in infrastructure that has a value of $1,000 or more and has an expected useful life of more than 1 year. So that is so we could move that back into the detailed budget document.
Okay. Difference of enterprise versus operating.
Difference between enterprise and versus operating is it is a business type fund versus a one that is more governmental in terms of receiving municipal contributions. So I will share the screen again as well for a different document, and you will see the operating funds are listed. This is also detailed budget. The operating funds are listed up here. The capital, other, and then enterprise down at the bottom. And the enterprise funds are the 3 code funds, regional refuse, and aquatics.
Basically, if you had to sum it up, the enterprise paid their way.
Correct.
Capital operating ratio, I know you don't have that. That we'll see as a comment coming back. History of Oak Hall parking, I think that's going to be a comment coming back. Existing staffing sheet, that is a detailed budget. That is in the detailed budget. That might be something that for the future that could be brought into as a part of the staffing pages. And then finally, somebody could explain the operating, why the revenues go into operating versus capital.
The revenues go into operating, and I did not hear which section of the question that was. I'm sorry, I cut out a little bit.
I think it was primarily with parks, but overall, operating revenue generally goes to, or revenues go to operating versus capital, correct?
Correct, because it matches up with the expense or the effort that comes out there, such as the salaries to run the programs.
Right, very good. Anything else on CA4? We got to start it there, Laura, but we'll definitely.
Thank you, I really appreciate that, that's
Yep.
great.
So if there are no other questions, I'll take a motion to approve CA4.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Moving forward, COG Building Intermunicipal Agreement Modification. Eric, please.
Thank you. I'll start by giving a short overview for the benefit of our folks watching at home and the newer members of the General Forum. In the early days of what was then known as the Ad Hoc Facilities Committee, the committee conducted research into the responsibilities and needs of various COG facilities, and those documents that they had to review, various COG agreements and leases and those sorts of documents. As that work progressed, other conversations were happening across COG about the need to plan for our facility needs into the future, identifying needs for each agency or the COG as a whole, because we have facilities that are owned and we may be outgrowing them, as well as facilities that are leased and may not be as economical to continue leasing in the long term. So one of the focus areas of the committee's review was the COG building, of course. The land under this building is owned by the COG, but the building itself is jointly owned by COG member communities, and through an intermunicipal agreement and a lease, the building was developed, and then payments are made through this lease agreement back to the member municipalities each year through the year 2028. In the fall of 2020, the Facilities Committee reviewed documents and agreed that there were questions in those agreements that would need to be answered. In particular, what will happen to the COG building at the end of the lease period in 2028. The committee at that point in 2020 asked that I consult with the municipal managers and that together we evaluate options for what to do at the end of the lease and if anything else needed to be addressed. We were to bring back recommendations to the Facilities Committee, and that took place in 2021. In mid-2021, meetings had been held with municipal managers. Staff had consulted with our COG solicitor, and advice was provided, and recommendations were prepared for the Facilities Committee, and it made a recommendation to the Executive Committee and then ultimately the General Forum. And in September last year, in 2021, the General Forum passed a motion to direct staff to draft and present documents that would transfer the ownership of the COG building to the COG at the end of the lease period in 2028. So staff and the COG solicitor have since consulted and drafted. The amendment has been drafted. It is an amendment to the intermunicipal agreement, which is in your packet. And that amendment was prepared as well as a potential deed to be recorded once the payments are complete and the lease period is concluded. That final piece was something that was requested by the Facilities Committee in May. So in your packet is the proposed amendment to the intermunicipal agreement, as I said, along with the 2001 intermunicipal agreement. And the amendment was developed by the solicitor in accordance with the modification procedure in the original agreement that is found in section 8 on page 3. So approval of this amendment would require a unit vote. Tonight's presentation and the opportunity for question and answer will help prepare the General Forum for such a vote in the future on the amendment. With us tonight are the COG solicitor, Terry Williams, and Joe, as you heard already, is available in case there are any financial questions as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, if there's anything else you'd like to add, I know you've been working on this quite a bit, so you may have other thoughts to add to my remarks.
Only 3 years. Only 3 years of my life. Eric summed it up very, very well. The only thing we could approve this tonight if we were comfortable.
Yes, we could. But
Yes. Okay. So, towards that as a potential goal, questions for staff and or the solicitor on the agreement that was supplied in the agenda package.
I have a follow-up question. I was just looking over it. There's signatures for every president of every COG board. That's not usual for our agreements. Is that because we are amending the COG agreement in some way that we have to do that?
The articles agreement require, but we are fortunate to have the solicitor here with us. So
Well, then I address it to Terry.
Question again, Jesse.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I noticed that this is the first time I've seen a COG document that anybody from the borough has had to sign. Is that because we are amending the COG agreement?
I'm not sure about your comment about the first time. You sign a lot of things for COG where the member municipalities are acting as municipalities, like all the borrowing resolutions and so forth. You're signing this one because the original agreement, which this modifies, were signed by the original member municipalities as individuals, not as COG.
No, that's what I meant, is we're signing as individuals this time. I haven't seen us have to do that yet.
Yes, Bruce.
What would be the implications of not doing this?
Do you want that one?
Do I want it? No.
That's actually a facilities question.
I think the history is important. I think when this was originally proposed, there was a lot of controversy among the members of COG about how to finance. And there was, I think fair to say, not agreement to have COG, the way you've seen it done before, borrow money, member municipalities, then pledge their tax dollars to stand behind it. So that College Township, through its president at the time, offered a proposal that instead of borrowing money, they would take money out of their respective budgets and contribute it so that the building could be built and then would be repaid through a lease agreement, which also earned 5% on the amount of money that each municipal government contributed, which is why this runs out through 2028. Now, to answer your question, I think it's fair to say that COG at the time and its member municipalities kicked the issue you've just addressed down the road. Because I think they were worried that they couldn't get an agreement as to what would happen. There's no legal precedent or guidance where I can point to that says this is what happens. It's going to be up to the membership of COG as to how that building will be handled. You could reach an agreement as the one that you have in front of you, which says once all of the monies have been repaid plus the 5%, then the building is transferred to COG. Then it becomes a facilities question. Now COG has land and building, what do they do with it? If you don't agree with that, the only way I see out of that to resolve it is to sell the building. Building and the land, both COG and member municipalities, put it on the market. But then you still have the issue of, all right, now what do we do with proceeds? Do they come to COG for COG's purposes? What happens? You could possibly try to sell it through a severance where you own the building. I'm sorry, stop using pronouns. COG owns the building. COG could then sell it. And we start again. The member municipalities own the building. They could sell it, and then the money would fall to the member municipalities, presumably in the same ratios that were created at the time of contribution to provide the money to buy it. But the land, COG would have to agree to sell. You could try to continue to rent it. You could rent it to an outside party, but renting it to an outside party will require both COG and the member municipalities to agree so that you unified the building and the land. In other words, it's going to be up to what the members of COG, acting as individual members, and COG decide they're going to do at 2028 when this lease is paid in full. Not much of an answer, but there is none.
And that's how it began 3 years ago. Oh, Trevino, welcome. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me an opportunity to speak to this. My initial reaction to your suggestion, Mr. Chair, about voting on this tonight was no. No, we have not had a chance, we meaning Patton Township Board of Supervisors, have not had a chance together, collectively, to review this. And this is a major step in terms of modifying the municipal agreements. So and especially now that I've heard the comments from the COG solicitor, I especially say there are so many different things we have to, consider. It's not a simple thing we're deciding. So I would like the opportunity to at least have our board discuss this with our township manager, our township finance director, and our township solicitor before we have a final vote of the general forum on this agreement. So I respectfully request that we do not vote on these, on this issue tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Again, I offered that we could, didn't say we were, but I fully suspect that there will be additional conversations and everything. The good part, your manager's already been involved in this. That's how we got here. So that conversation should be helpful for you and everything. Joe, one of the other things that is important in any legal situation is the intent of the parties. Would you agree, Terry? If you can discern it.
Well, the problem with so fluid a body like this, intents change every 2 years.
Right. So one thing that we went to, Joe, if you would, one thing that we did find that was consistent throughout was a comment in the COG audit that goes back to, go ahead.
Is that readable?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you look down here with arrangements, this is footnote 6 in the COG audit. If you look at arrangements with the borough and townships, this is dictating from the what happened in terms of the accounting transaction for the when the COG building was constructed. And as you can see down here, it has been treated not so much as a lease or a gift, but rather a loan repayment, with including a stated interest rate of 5.55%. So at some point in this audit footnote predates my time here at the COG, it was based upon the construction and approved budget and then a 5.55% return on the evidently the initial $2.5 million investment. This is at least for the financial transaction that I have seen in the footnote since I've been here.
Great, and one of the unfortunate things is it's not consistent across the member municipalities. Some have it as a contribution to the COG, some have it as a loan to the COG, some have it as a lease, some don't. The majority don't have it. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna ask Mr. Williams a couple questions here.
Please.
And well, I've been with them on that committee that I was on facilities, we've discussed this. And I've had questions and just trying to get my head around. And the one thing is, whose name's on the deed? If I go down to the recorder of deeds and I pull the deed, whose name's on it?
You will find the land is titled in COG.
Okay, what is the building title?
The building is owned by the member municipalities.
So it has each member's municipality? Or does it say COG, Council of Government?
No, the assessment data, I think I provided that says COG, but the ownership of the building is clearly from the documents that were done back in the early 2000s in the member municipalities as to the building.
Okay, because here's where I come from. I come from a world of business, and corporations, and that type of thing. I've been on a lot of board of directors. If I look at, when I look at COG, okay, and I look at this organization, its board of directors are the municipalities. We sit here and we vote. So in order to gain assets or get rid of assets, the board of directors has to vote to do that 99% of the time. So my question is, are we chasing our tail here? Or is there something simple we can do and say, when it's paid back, we just keep going, it's gonna be COG instead of, the member, because the members are gonna still vote whether it's sold, kept, updated, whatever. So I think I'm hoping we're making a mountain out of a molehill, because this really sounds confusing to me. And I've not been able to get my head around the whole thing of why we can't just let it go and get to the end and say, okay, now it belongs to COG and move on. I don't understand that part. And as far as this goes, voting tonight or not, we have till, what is it, April 2028 to vote on this. So
Right.
we have a long time to fix this, but I know our intent was let's get it done sooner rather than later. And that's what we talked about in the committee. So I guess that's where my head, I'm having a hard time getting around this, that we're just fighting each other, we're fighting the same people, I guess is the question.
I don't know that we're fighting.
No.
The only thing,
Oh, no, okay,
the only
that's a
thing,
bad term. That's a bad term,
I would
but you know what I'm
say,
saying.
this began under you as chair.
I know that.
So, we'll
I
go there.
And I'm confused.
But, and the reason that it's happening now is to facilitate the decisions for facilities, and it really started in the parking lot. The parking lot needed repair. Whose parking lot is it to repair? Is it the member municipalities, or is it COG? And then there's a whole other subject that we haven't even gotten into is the lease references maintaining. It doesn't reference capital replacement at all. So that led to another element of it, issue of it.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask the solicitor, because like I said, I've had a hard time getting my head around it.
Right.
And
So
like you said, I was the chairman when this all started.
So the other piece of that, you're absolutely right. The assessment record on the county, at the county, does not differentiate between who owns the land and who owns the building. On the tax card, it shows COG and it shows the building. And that's fine, but there's an agreement that says
Right.
that it is. Now,
But
I'll put my legal hat on,
Well-
and to do that, you should have a document that says, I give you permission to put a building on my land.
If I'm looking at conflict of interest, because basically, as I look at the transaction, COG got a building and they put it up and they financed it, and municipalities, or quote, the board of directors, became the financiers, and that really isn't a good thing, and that's kind of what we've done here. And now we're trying to figure out how to fix it, right? And I think that's again, that's where I'm coming, is there a way to say, hey, we're all the same group here, let's just fix it?
Well, we are, and that's why we want to have these conversations to make an informed decision. Laura, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I'll add to the confused ones. I kind of thought it was more straightforward, and now I'm wondering, so is it the case that like in the past, this statement about how the municipalities were doing things differently, does that mean like some of us were paying interest and some weren't? Or it was like all divided and then some were accounted as interest and non-interest payments? You know what I'm saying? Like, where's the problem? Is it in the future or is it in the past where things were being registered differently in the accounting sense? Or is it both?
Really, the reason that this whole process started was towards the future.
Yeah.
Doing stuff now.
Right, but then we found that.
Right, and then we found that there wasn't consistency across the member municipalities. If the members own the building, okay, I'll put my counting hat on. Joe, listen. If the member municipalities own the building, there should be a line item on each member municipality's balance sheet that says COG building.
Same with regional parks then.
Those are owned through, well, for Whitehall, yes. Everybody else is under COG, and it's on the COG balance sheet.
Okay.
But
If the building is municipally owned, it should be on municipal balance sheet.
Correct.
You said this would have been back in 2003 with respect to our budgets?
Yes.
So if it wasn't, we're now gonna fix that, everybody's fixing that.
Possibly. That was,
Okay.
honestly, that was
We don't
why,
know yet.
that's why we got the managers to start this process. Because you could potentially touch their balance sheets. Carla, please.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it. Should the building go to the COG 2028? Will the municipalities lose any control over decision making or over funding, or should COG dissolve over happens to the building, the same as happens to the parks. We'll not lose it.
Yeah,
Will
what
we
does
lose any
happen
of
to-
our decision-making control?
Well, you lose control of it, but you are COG.
Right. It'll only simplify what happens in such a situation, right? Like, I would imagine we'd have to go through this process in order to dissolve it anyway, right? Or not?
Well, COG can't make decisions without the member of municipality.
Without itself, right? It's like we're just paying from our right hand into our left hand. We just need to put it all in one hand, one bucket. Okay, thanks. I think you answered.
Yes, sir. My concern is the future. 2028, is this building going to handle the Center Region Council of Governments? Going to want to sell the property and move on? If, let's just say the COG decides that this building is not big enough to do what it needs to do, and then they say, all right, well, the townships have turned it over, and then the Council of Government controls the funds, which is us, but, you know, we might be able to lease this building out. You know, lease rates are terribly high in State College. And the municipalities could actually make money back on this process by renting out the building, and COG can make money by leasing out the land. You know, if we turned it over to the COG, then technically it's the communities, it's not Patton Township, it's not Ferguson, it's not State College Borough, it's not happening. The money goes to the COG, which is us, but that's not the same as giving a return back to the municipality. If the ground was being sold or leased off in the future. You know, once municipalities sign that over, then it's going to be under everybody's control. Nobody would get their share back if the ground was sold off or leased out in the future.
Joe actually has a financial analysis to show.
Yeah.
So Carla nailed it. It's left hand, right hand, left pocket, right pocket. The money that comes through is going to offset municipal contributions. So the money doesn't go away. I mean, there's still.
Right, municipalities that are funding.
Exactly, and Joe will show you here in a minute, but it actually allows for the municipality. So, yeah, Joe, go ahead and talk through your spreadsheet.
Okay, so the spreadsheet was, there was an analysis put forward, and then it was also pulled off of the facility condition assessments, which the facilities committee had approved for the COG building. So the facilities committee approved and had an estimate of $142,000 per year for the COG building as the capital reinvestment being necessary at 2% of the value of the building. That'll be an important number going forward. So now, if you look at this, and hang on a second here. That should be better. If you look at what we have here, this is the financial analysis for the COG building. The amounts that code and refuse are paying into rent and or debt, depending on what you qualify at, and capital reinvestment continue as rent payments into the COG building capital fund to finance future COG facility condition assessment needs. The rent for code is in yellow. Their rent and capital reinvestment are in orange. I apologize, orange. And the rent and the capital reinvestment for the refuse program are in blue, in light blue. Municipal payments then for administration, planning, CCMPO, rent and debt, and capital and reinvestment are eliminating, negating the need for the municipalities to fund the COG's buildings, rent and debt and future capital needs. So we're basically saying the combined rent expense of $101,000 is being funded mainly, almost entirely by municipal contributions. So then rather than pass rent and debt from the municipalities to COG and back to the municipalities just for administration, planning, and MPO, the upkeep of the COG building is paid for by the enterprise funds. So we're able to basically say the code amount and the refuse amount combined right now that we are paying is approximately $137,500. If you look at back to the FCAs that I said would be important earlier, that's $142,000. That's a recommended capital reinvestment going forward for the COG building based upon the facilities condition assessments approved by the facilities committee. And that's just a 2% reinvestment in the building, and that is standard procedure for facilities people. I really wish Lou was here to talk about that. So what we're basically saying is right here, it is a wash from the financial side for the municipalities, because all of the code, if all the code and refuse funds end up going into the COG building fund to pay as rent into the COG building fund to pay for the ongoing capital reinvestment for the COG building. And with that, I'll pass it back over.
So the other thing, to quote my white collar FBI friend, follow the money. So for those that are not aware, the way that it works right now, the rent that COG pays to the municipalities is posted as a credit against our municipal contributions, meaning that we don't have to make those forward. So we get to 2020, and that's because the member municipalities gave, contributed, donated, loaned, take your pick of words, the money to build this building. At 2028, if the member municipalities continue to charge COG rent for this, where do you think the money comes from? It comes from the member municipalities. So you have to contribute, municipal contribute for COG to pay the rent back to you. Go ahead.
I think you missed my point.
No, I got your point. I did get your point. And it doesn't go, but it doesn't go away.
The building, let's say, is worth $5 million,
Sure.
COG is no longer using it.
Right, so then the articles of agreement come into play, which cover how an asset that is disposed of, that the money goes based on the COG formula. So it doesn't go, again, it doesn't go away.
Is that was gonna be what my follow-up is about it. So with the parks and like when we own something, is it covered in the articles of agreement? Because there's the part of the ownership of Whitehall, of Ferguson and that whatnot is not in the articles of agreement. So then there's the interaction effect between those things. And then my other part of that question is, this wouldn't change any kind of voting purview because we have unanimous needs to vote. Like our unanimous voting about land ownership and property ownership, nothing changes with either decision that we make about this, is a question. Yeah.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Please don't confuse this with Whitehall Park, because there you have an operating park and recreation authority that is doing the park. It's not like the ownership of this building, it is in some type of building authority, which would make it like the park in terms of management. That's not the way this is.
Not management, ownership. Ferguson is a co-owner.
Right, ownership or management. You don't have that insulation of an authority that you might have in the park. And I don't want to digress into Whitehall Park. The point is that the right pocket, left pocket, I suppose, is one way to look at this. It just depends on what the members of COG feel they want to do. And I think the facilities group has to decide, well, are we able to keep this building for some purpose, or do we have to build a brand new building somewhere else? And they need the help of finding out what's our financing going to be. But at the end of the day, if they decide they're going to build a new building, guess what? They've got to come back to the general forum to get approval for that and to find some way to raise the money to build it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Due to so many questions and comments, could we just take the 30 days to our next meeting to address this?
We are definitely going to take the next 30 days, but while we are gathered, if there are questions that we can answer so that all can hear the same answers, I think it's to our benefit. Paul.
I'm trying to simplify it so that I understand where we are here. I think David's question is about the equity in the building. Whatever that equity is, resides in proportion to the COG formula. And that will remain with municipalities for however long the building or the land is here. And if I understood Joe correctly, what he's saying is that what's currently classified as rent will shift almost completely to the maintenance costs in 2028, correct? That's where the 142,000 comes in.
I'll let Joe speak to his own.
Yes, it was rather by coincidence, but the amount that code and refuse are currently paying in rent almost equal the need as identified for the ongoing capital needs at the COG building.
So what currently comes back as a credit to each of the municipalities will instead go to the ongoing maintenance of the building, which again is a shared asset, and maintain our equity in that proportion.
That is correct.
I'm just trying to put some different words on it in order to.
And by proportional, you're referring to the COG.
COG formula, yes.
So if I could circle back to a question that Frank asked earlier about trying to keep this as simple as possible. I believe the solicitor has done that in crafting this amendment relative to paragraph 8 from the original agreement that says, the within agreement shall be binding on the parties in hereunto as well as their successors. The within, this is legal talk, so it's not as easy as I thought it would be. But the within agreement may be modified by the member municipalities hereunto by written agreement adopted by all parties hereunto. So basically, he's saying, there's a provision for modifying the original agreement and putting words in Terry's mouth. And he's saying, this is the simplest way to accomplish that. And so circling back to your question, Frank, I think we're trying to get us onto the simplest path possible with this amendment. So in the discussion with the municipal managers over a year ago, the topic of how this asset is carried on the books or not was something talked about by the managers, and I believe each felt they needed to deal with that for their own municipality, and that really wasn't something to be sorted out by the whole of COG. So while that's an important discovery, it's not necessarily something that all of COG needs to solve. It would be up to each manager to talk about with their board or council. So the big thing really circles back to the simplest way to accomplish the goal, which was the question you asked earlier.
Right, and I think you also said, you got the land in one name and you got the building in another name. Simple is whatever it is in the same name.
So Mr. Trevino's comment about this discussion, that's where we are.
Okay.
And we have to ensure that the consistency of what Terry has told us is shared with all of the municipalities.
And that was our
I
whole.
think that's basically what we need to do.
Right, and that's why we wanted all ears to hear the same answers at the same time.
Revert back to the municipal level.
Yes, yes, and then, towards a potential unit vote in the future. It may be March 2028. I've put that we're on a 2026 schedule, the way we're going.
What am I up for election?
So, but before we close out, are there any, yes, Betsy, please.
I don't know if this is relevant to the question we're asking now, but hypothetically, suppose that the COG, which now is comprised of 6 bodies, 6 municipalities, what if we're petitioned by another municipality to join COG, or what if the municipality petitions to leave COG? Do we need to think about that now, or is that something we think about in 2029?
Would you agree that's covered by the Articles of Agreement, the COG Articles of Agreement?
I want to make sure I understand Betsy's question. If
Well, I meant it as one, but if there was a change in the number of entities in COG.
either more or less.
Exactly.
Yes, I think then you'd have to look at the COG articles to decide how that voting But it would seem to me logical that if you added another municipality that did not contribute toward the money to construct the building, under the agreement that you already have in place, they would not be entitled to any of the assets that might come if you sold. You know, you could obviously reach a new agreement with COG about a lease with multiple numbers, but I don't see how a new municipality, let me pick on Bellefonte. If you added Bellefonte, I don't see how Bellefonte would be entitled to money out of that transaction.
Unless they bought it.
Oh, of course, if they bought it,
Yeah.
sure.
Similar, the tapping, UAJ tapping fee is supposed to represent you buying in at the same level as the original people who formed UAJ. That was the intent. Elliot?
Just whatever we decide when we're ready to vote on this, we should probably be operating from the same document. So we should put that together before we're ready to actually consider it, whatever time it is, whether it's months or years from now, just so that all the boards will see the same thing that we're talking about before going ahead and voting.
I believe that is the modification agreement to intermunicipal agreement 2001-1 that is in our agenda package today. So hopefully we've achieved that. As Eric indicated, Terry's taken as simple a path as possible for a very complex, old issue.
Just so everybody knows that that's the case.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to add time to this discussion, but something Betsy asked made me think like about simplicity. We are a complex organization, so like simplicity is like questionable if it's actually achievable sometimes, but so this question of a new member joining, I mean, I don't know how likely that is, but if it were likely, wouldn't it be just so much simpler to just retain percentage ownership in the building? Terry, is there a reason why you think it's simpler for the COG to own it versus it's simpler to just municipally co-own it?
Laura, I want to be clear. Now you're over in the policy. That's not a legal question.
Okay,
That's up to all of these elected officials to decide what they want done.
so it may not be simpler if we want to, because I'm just trying to think like if another municipality did join, would they then pay rent, or then like we all own the building and they don't own it, but they're still a member? And if you're saying like they're not entitled to the money, does that mean like when we sold the asset, they couldn't be part of COG because they weren't entitled to them, then they pay rent? You know, like I just wonder about the simplicity hypothesis based on Betsy's question, despite the fact that it may not be likely.
Or even relevant.
Or even relevant.
Yeah, the only thing I would put out is adding or deleting a member from COG will not be simple.
No, I
matter
don't
what.
mean that, I mean ownership, if
No,
there were
I
a
know.
new member, yeah.
It makes it even.
Mr. Chairman, right here. I don't think that somebody joining COG is the issue. I think that it would be a bigger issue if somebody left COG and wanted to take their part of the equity with them. That's where the problem would come in. I don't think that adding somebody, that can be done, but if somebody wanted to leave and say, hey, I have so much equity in that building, it should come with us, I think that would be the issue.
And then maybe it's.
That's down the road, let's not even think about it.
Well, but the only thing, so there's an exhibit to the agreement that says you own X percent of the building.
Exactly.
Back in 2003. The COG formula says you own X percent of the building today. So whether it's under COG or whether under the agreement, there is a number, and it's a known number. It's not a guessed number or anything like that. There is some basis on it. So, any other questions before we close this one out? And I will be discussing with the exec committee on when they give me an indication of when they feel comfortable bringing this back. But I will say, again, going back to the facility, we first asked this question in 2018. Yes, it was in 2018, and that's what's taken us to get this long to get to this point. So 2028's coming a lot fast based on that timeline. So that's why you have to ask these questions and answers, because it is complex. And that's why we started asking the questions and doing the research. And Terry's been wonderful working through all of that with us. So we'll keep doing it. We'll keep doing it. When it's right, we'll do it, or we won't do it. The only thing I will say, it creates all kinds of facilities issues in there, because the current lease agreement is absolutely not clear on various elements of that and everything. So COG could be saying, okay, come replace my parking lot, kind of thing. So there are pitfalls with not doing anything, and ideally this would have been resolved back in the day, but here we are. That's why we get paid the big
Will
bucks.
we be able to request Terry to understand municipal meeting?
I can't speak for this, but
Well, it's our funding, it's just.
Sure.
To the point needed, and if needed.
okay, very good. Thank you everybody for the discussion. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. It is a complex thing, a very complex thing that predates the majority of us and everything. So we're just trying to bring understanding. And the other part of it is, as we've indicated, there's going to be a change in elected officials coming up in the next couple of years. So all the education piece and all the information that has been put out has to be retaught again. And that's another reason that we're trying to get it moved forward with the current cast of characters and everything. So, but we will not do so till it's right, until everybody has enough understanding to make an informed vote. So with that, let's go to something else complicated, fire vehicle purchase issues. Mr. Baer.
Good evening, and for those of you who might have not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Steve Baer, I'm the fire director for the COG, and thank you for the audience. So, like a lot of things you've probably read about, the supply chain in the country is a mess, and inflation is increasing. And that has caused some serious problems with our maintenance of the fleet in the fire department, and puts us at what I believe is an unacceptable risk that we would like your help to deal with. So for those of you who were not on the Public Safety Committee meeting the last 2 months and the Finance Committee this month, I'm going to kind of hit the real high points of kind of where we're at. We spend a lot of time out on the interstate, as do some other fire departments in Center County. In fact, we're out there in any given year. Look over the last 3 years, it's about 50 to 60 times, but it's as high as 75 every now and then. And when you're out in the expressway or any other road where the speed limit's over 45, the national practice is to protect the people working on the scene of the highway, and the only way you have to do that is to block traffic with a vehicle, and that's usually the fire engine. So fire engine is about 38,000 pounds of mass, and so the idea is if something comes into your scene, it crashes into the fire engine instead of the ambulance and the ambulance people and firefighters who are working to usually crash while we're out there. That's happened to us before, in 2014 most notably, most seriously, but since 2014 we've had our apparatus, either our apparatus clipped or our fire police vehicles hit 5 times. Now normally that's not necessarily a big deal to deal with because we are insured for the actual replacement value of our apparatus. In other words, if somebody crashes into the rear end of our fire engine and it costs us $1 million to replace that fire engine. It doesn't matter how old that fire engine is or was, we get a check for $1 million because that's what it costs to go buy a new one. The problem that we have today with that scheme is the delivery for a fire engine has increased to up to 26 months. And we do not operate with reserve equipment. So when you look at what we own what we use, period. We don't engines in reserve, we don't keep ladder trucks in reserve. We have active fleet, period. So we run lean and mean. And frankly, the community cannot do without a fire engine for 2 years. I mean, that is not acceptable. Okay, that would create a serious problem for us to meet the standard of cover that we've committed to the community. So we looked at options on how to fix that problem. So, can you lease something? Could you buy a used fire engine, rehab it, and sell it later when your fire engine gets replaced? And frankly, those were not particularly attractive for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, they're all very costly, but the biggest issue right now is there is no supply of fire engines. The used market right now is as low as it has ever been in history in terms of used apparatus because the supply chain is so constrained. I'll tell you how, the supply chain is so constrained right now that, in 2 vehicles, 2 water tankers that are on commercial Kenworth chassis, we received a letter from Kenworth saying they're not accepting any orders until mid-2023. So if I wanted to go buy the tanker that we just bought, several months ago, it took delivery up, I couldn't do it. Cannot do it. If you need to replace an ambulance right now, it's not going to happen. You better find something that you can make, borrow, or steal. It's even hard to get a pickup truck right now. State contracts it's not even clear when they're going to open up in 2023 and to what degree, and everybody's been told they're going to be limited in what they are going to have available. So we are in an unprecedented period that I hope is temporary. The manufacturers, at least one manufacturer has suggested to us that by 2024 some of this will ease, but the delivery on fire engines is likely at that time to still be the 15 to 18 month range. So what we started to look at was the idea of a vehicle that's literally made to be crashed into, and that's what you see in a construction zone, and that's a vehicle with an attenuator on the back. So these things are usually in a construction zone. You typically see them as state body style trucks because they do some double duty on the scene of construction site. They have a cage that comes off the back called a scorpion, and the idea is something wrecks into that, and then if they haven't demolished the truck, you can fix the cage. So what I'm looking for tonight is kind of 2 favors, as I come with my hat in hand. The first thing is we would like you to consider a budget amendment that would allow us to make such a purchase. And then the next part is the harder part. The budget amendment, in my mind, is the easier part. We would like you to temporarily authorize us to do the best we can to demonstrate that we're buying something at fair market value, because it is exceedingly difficult right now to get a bid for anything. And the reason for that is twofold. One, people that are selling equipment that you are going to order have no idea what it's going to cost them by the time they can deliver it. We typically buy stuff through a program called Pennsylvania Co-Stars, which is there to protect us from these kind of things. In the last 8 to 10 months, what's happened in Co-Stars is manufacturers simply cancel your Co-Stars order, run you back to the well. The new bids say, for example, so if I was buying a fire unit we just ordered today, the contract might look like, here's the base price, but if steel goes up 5%, then you agree to pay 5%. And if tires go up 7%, you agree to pay 7% more on what the cost of these tires would be. In business, I have never written a purchase order for a moving target. So what we would like to try to do is we are currently scouring the manufacturers of this type of equipment. There are very few of these available. it's gonna be next to impossible to get a bid that has two of the same vehicle for a direct comparison. And so what we're asking for is some relief on the purchasing policy for the short term for this specific purpose, for this specific reason. I think I summed that up as well as I remember the conversations we've had in the committees, and I'll take any questions of any aspect of this project or this request.
Great. Clearly a public safety issue. If I might call on our public safety chair to share his thoughts.
I actually missed the last meeting, so Amron actually chaired the last meeting, but I will go ahead and say that we discussed it before the formal presentation. And this just seems to be a real risk mitigation opportunity for us, given the fact that we really don't have an alternative to replace equipment if it's lost. So, Amron.
Putting it on me.
Anything to add to that?
No, I think our committee was in agreement to bring it here, but we were also in agreement to support purchase.
And from the finance side, we looked at it as an investment to protect our valuable asset that now takes 2 years to replace and with no real means to replace it. So it's an investment towards that. Laura?
Right, there's a real, opportunity costs that we avoid there, a potential opportunity cost, and it's in a place where we can't afford that. So I'm very supportive of doing this. Thank
Great.
you.
And, yes?
Does it need to be fire engine body versus say biaxial dump truck like PennDOT uses with the?
No, actually it doesn't. In fact, I quoted a dump truck. The problem is they're not available. The only thing, so the largest dealer in Pennsylvania for this stuff is Royal, right outside of Hamburg, south of 78.
I mean, fire trucks or?
No, they're crash axles. Yeah, well, crash attenuator equipped.
Yeah, okay.
Construction equipment, so they're right between Harrisburg and Allentown. They have very low inventory, every bit of it is spoken for. What is available right now are the fire engine chassis, because what they've done is, and there aren't very many, there's only 4 of them out there right now. What they've done is you've taken basically a fire engine that, for whatever reason, has a non-serviceable pump and body, strip that away, keep the cab and chassis, move the fuel tank up forward, add the mass to it, put the scorpion and takeawaiter on the back. And frankly, it's cheaper. It's less expensive. Based on the quotes I've got from Royal on the construction type equipment.
And Steve had shared.
But again, I gotta emphasize, there's nothing sitting in the Royal lot available. Okay, we went out there personally to visit them on Thursday of last week.
And Steve had shared also, which made sense, the consistency of type of equipment. They're used to dealing with fire trucks.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I will say there's some real advantages to doing this because the handling characteristics of that fire engine cab and chassis, the wheelbase is very similar to what we own. It's about 4 inches shorter than engine 523 and 1. So and it comes equipped with some lighting and some other stuff, which is one of the reasons it's cheaper. Frankly, it already has a lot of things that are desirable for a fire department. I don't have to go back and rework a state body truck or a dump truck with the things that I'm supposed to have them out, in emergency conditions on the expressway or on the road.
other questions for Steve?
Question. Are there any sources, like statewide or federally, for the kind of equipment that you're trying to find?
Not for a fire department this time. In fact, it wouldn't even qualify in the assistance firefighter's grant right now.
What I'm thinking of is federal government. I mean, they have military, they have fire equipment or firefighting equipment, obviously.
And that stuff typically goes back through the brokers, and the brokers are go look at a used car lot. Broker fire engine broker look the same. It's empty. The stuff that is out there is 30 years old, and frankly, gonna go for scrap or ag use for a pump or something. But, yeah, and we're still flipping rocks. You know, that's it, we're still flipping rocks.
Mr. Trevino.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I certainly fully support these two suggested motions. I'll go ahead and make the motion so that we can continue discussion on the motion, because I think the important concept here that we need to agree on is whether the current situation justifies changing our normal purchasing process. So I'll move the two motions. One is the budget amendment in an amount not to exceed $100,000, and the second would be to designate this as a sole purchase, and that COG exec director, fire director, finance director are authorized to approve the final purchase.
Okay, well, we can have one motion on the floor at a time. We'll do it with the first motion. And then looking for a second, multiple seconds, take your pick, Scott. Any further discussion on the first motion, which is the budget amendment for $100,000 out of the fund balance, existing fund balance? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Right.
Half Moon and Harris Township are abstaining, but we appreciate your support on the concept. All those against, please say no. By voice vote, first motion passes. Dan, I'll now accept your motion for the second portion of that.
The second motion is to make an exception to our normal purchasing process by authorizing this particular purpose as a sole source purchase, and that the three people here, the COG exec director, fire director, and finance director, authorized to approve the final purchase.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Discussion on the current motion, which is an exception to the COG purchase policy. Joe, if you would, just quick summary of the purchase policy.
Yes, there's 3 different levels for the purchasing policy that it impacts. If there's a purchase over $1,500 but less than $4,000, it requires 3 quotes and the signature of the agency director. From $4,000 to this year's $21,900, it depends on the bid thresholds from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which change annually. But from $4,000 to $21,900, that requires 3 written quotes and the signatures from the executive director, finance director, and agency director. And over $21,900, unless it is purchased on like a CoStar's competitive bid type of aspect, requires general forum approval and to go through a public bid process, unless it's professional services, which this obviously is not. So over $21,900 would require general forum approval or the governing board approval, and then it would also require signatures from the executive director, finance director, and agency director.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the current motion? Again, as Mr. Binkley reminds, Half Moon and Harris, you'll be abstaining. But if there are no other questions, I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Continuing on, university report. Ms. Young, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I just have 2 items, one of which you've probably already heard, which are state appropriations. We're flat this year. Unfortunately, we're still working to get our legislators to give us more funding support as well as other institutions. So therefore, we do have to raise tuition at University Park campus. That tuition will be raised for those families who make $75,000 or under. And so I think that was put in Penn State News and a couple of other articles, I think in the CDT and others. So something that we're constantly working on. The second item is that enrollment is slightly up this year. And I mean slightly, we may have 1,000 more students this year than the year before, but we're really kind of in the same range we've been in previous years. So that's, nothing to really be concerned about. Our graduate enrollment is up maybe about 500. So I think that we're kind of getting back to levels of pre-pandemic enrollment, which is really great for the university. So that's all I have right now. We're just getting ready to get back in the fall, and we hope to kick things off with football and other great things. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. State College Area School District Report. Do we have Ms. Brand or she's not on? Mr. Buck? Nope. Okay. Continuing on, Executive Director Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just draw your attention to the activity report for the month and some of the other things that are listed in the committee reports, but in particular in the activity report, there are a couple of mentions regarding our Southeast Asian fellows who were visiting for the past 4 weeks, and they had I think a wonderful work experience engaging with folks throughout the COG as well as within the community through the university. They attended an environmental and legal conference. Both are attorneys, by the way. Both of our fellows are attorneys. Chewy and Tess they're from. Tess is from Vietnam and Chewy is from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And as I said, both are attorneys, and they have both learned so much that they plan to bring back to their work back home and their communities to make things better for their communities, and they want to stay in touch and continue networking. And I want to give a big shout out to Pam Adams, to Shelley Motto and Jim May for spending time not only during the workday, but evenings and weekends. We all had experiences taking them to restaurants, to hiking, to museums, and to the Arts Fest, and lots of things. So they really got a full range of the summer experience here in Happy Valley, and I think they had a great time, and we hope to continue to stay in touch with them. So thanks again to everybody who helped make that happen. I expect we will be doing this next year and for many years to come. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, Mr. Chair.
Questions for the Executive Director? Seeing nor hearing none, we'll continue on to Agency Director reports. Eric, do you want to introduce these?
Sure. First up, Center Region Parks and Recreation Director Pam Salakangas has a report on the annual snapshot.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the introduction again, Eric. In your packet was the 2021 annual snapshot. We actually had this prepared for you in May, but since we've had some general forum meetings canceled, we brought it forward to tonight's meeting. And I just wanted to provide a few highlights for you. And if anybody has had a chance to read it and has any questions for me at the end, I'd be glad to take them. The annual snapshot is our agency report in conjunction with the Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority. We did change the format going from 2019 to 2020 to be more of a storytelling format. Actually, it's quite similar to what the SCLO library staff put out, very much telling the highlights and the stories. And for 2021, our story is, of course, successfully navigating the pandemic and continuing to grow our activities through that pandemic successfully and keeping the majority of our team intact. So a lot of the photos that you see in the annual report, when you get a chance to look at it, if you haven't seen it, are focused on our staff. They were taken during last July's Parks and Recreation Professionals Day, last July 15th. And we wanted to scatter them throughout that document, just in case you've not met all of our staff, you get a chance to kind of see our professionals at work. So it's really highlighting the story of working through the pandemic, staying strong and coming forward as a team. A couple of highlights. Inside, we have a section called Community Connections, and that's written perspective from myself and Kathy Madison, the authority chairperson, of just what it took to kind of dig deep and go through a lot of change. All of us in this room tonight and on this Zoom call went through change during Zoom. You've all experienced it as elected officials and the decisions you've had to make. And we talk a little bit about the decisions we had to make as staff and trying to keep our staff safe, keep our kids and our adults safe who are participating in our programs, and actually still trying to run programs during the high end of the pandemic. So that section's very meaningful, talks a lot about the staff and what great work they've done over the last couple of years. On pages 3 and 4, we give you some highlights of the agency from 2021. So a little bit of a data report from that year. A couple of things I want to point out is, I'm going to pull up my copy in front of you so I can tell you, in case you have it with you, what page I'm on. But at the bottom of page 3, let me just make sure that is page 3 as I catch up to you. Yes, we talk about park pavilion rentals. I want you all to know, as the owners of many municipal parks, for which we maintain and manage on your behalf, you know, the public just went out to the parks in droves, as you know. They really, really appreciated the green spaces and continue to do so today. So at the bottom of page 3, we highlight where we were in 2021 with total pavilion rentals for the year, which is 755. And in just completing a second quarterly report for our municipalities, which will be coming to you very soon, we've already eclipsed the halfway point this year. We're at 450 rentals through the end of June, and they have not stopped coming in. So people are still using the parks. They're still going there, whether it's for a pavilion rental, for a picnic or reunion. They're going to the parks using the pavilions, the playgrounds, the basketball courts, the tennis courts, and of course, all of your sports fields that are in place. We continue to run programming every year that also encourages people to learn about our parks through our scavenger hunt program. They might learn about the statue of Lucy Letterer in Letterer Park, or they may learn about that wonderful slide that Harris Township has in Country Place Parklet. So we really do encourage people to get out and visit the parks. Also at the very bottom of page 3, it's interesting because as I look back at this document that's now 2 months old, we threw in a very small snippet of data about the youth scholarship program. And I want to bring you up to speed on that because I've spoken to many of elected officials through our budget process, through the finance committee, about the goals of that youth scholarship program. And we revamped it 2 years ago to make it more available to the public, to make it easier for people to apply, and to also continue to fundraise and grow those dollars. So in 2021, we provided a very small blurb that we had provided 67 youth scholarships at an equivalent amount of $5,760.25. And that was our biggest amount to date. We were very proud of it. We got a lot of great feedback from folks who were using the system. But I want to tell you that as of the end of today, we're at 109 scholarships And we've given out $11,392.75. So the scholarship program is finally doing what we've wanted it to do. We continue to receive grants and donations for that youth scholarship program, but all of that work that we put into it 2 years ago to make those changes are now paying off. So we have a half a year to go. And I'm sure you all will hear more about our youth scholarship program as we go through our budget process. So that was one highlight from 21 into 22 that we're really proud of. And on page 4, we provide some highlights of our sports participation, which is a major contributor to our revenue, which contributes to, of course, the operation of the municipal parks, particularly those with sports fields. You can see we had great participation in 2021 with 1,528 youth and adults participating in various sports programs. And we were only operating about 3/4 of our sports programs due to facility limitations in 2021. And those facility limitations are starting to lift for us in 2022. So we hope that our 2022 data, when we report out to you next year, will be that much improved. And on page 8, we also provide some operational details. We do a lot of benchmarking. Those of you that are on the finance committee have seen some of this data before, but we provide our total number of maintenance hours in 2021, which is 19,685 and change. We provide the breakdown, whether that was turf maintenance, playground equipment maintenance, general park maintenance, which is a lot of trash and restroom work. We also provided some benchmarking as part of our staffing study. And we also included it here regarding participation data and rental program and returning customers. We're really, really proud of the returning customer information. I know this is something SLO pays attention to. You want to keep your customers happy and coming back. And we have a lot of people that are returning. Our numbers are just under 50% that people are coming back for second and third programs. And you can see we averaged about 31% of new customers in 2021. And I fully attribute that to 2 things. One, the mailed active guide that went out for the first time last summer. And then the great social media reach that we have from our agency. Christy's doing a great job in getting information out to the public. So we're very, very proud of that. And really the biggest highlight that I just want to wrap up my highlights for you is the page 10 and 11. The authority asked us to bring back our list of partnerships. We took it out of our annual snapshot, and they asked us to put it back in for 2021. And you can see it takes, a page and a half at a very small font to list all the people our agency partners with through program, whether they're coming to us as a program visit or they're hosting us at their site, maybe pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, all the people that might donate or provide prizes to us or have contributed financially to our operation. It is a long list, and I think it's very impressive, and it gives you a chance to really see how much work we do in the community and what our outreach is on the business side. And we've not heard back from some of these businesses, maybe on the economic impact to them by partnering with us, but I bet there is some positive impact through advertising, through sponsorships, when people see their name at our events. And Christy's really stepped up her work with the partnership program, particularly on the sponsorship side, and that has expanded greatly in 22. So you're gonna see some new numbers when we report out for this year's data as well. So those are the highlights I wanted to share with you on the report. And of course, if anybody had a chance to read through it and has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but we're glad to have it in front of you finally.
Questions for the Parks Director? Excellent, thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Lisa Collins and Paula Bannon have updates for you on the summer reading program at SLO Center Region Library.
I
Hi, everyone. And you can see I'm joined online there with Paula Bannon, who's our head of children's services at SCLO Library. My name's Lisa Reeves Collins, and I'm the director at SCLO Library. And we have some great news to share. Your SCLO Library has developed really a fantastic summer reading program this year. And we're extraordinarily proud of the fact that our June circulation showed a return to our 2019 numbers. In June of 2019, that was pre-COVID, we had circulated 54,822 physical items. Last month, we circulated 55,033 items. So the community is back in the library, checking out books, checking out movies, checking out kits, and all in all, just using the library as much as they did before. In the same month, through our Federation-wide Interlibrary Loan Program, we moved almost 4,000 items throughout the county, which is absolutely fantastic. And we picked up a little over 4,300 items at our remote book drops. Tons of use, lots of community members really coming together to read together, to explore together, to learn together. It's our busiest season every year, and we're always tremendously excited to serve our community. But one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight is why we do summer reading. Why is it so important? And it has, we know, a huge impact, especially on the youth of our community. And that's why I wanted to bring Paula Bannon, our SCLO's head of youth services, here with us tonight, so she could kind of give you some of that sort of behind the scenes. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we putting the energy, the money, the grant development into this program? And what does it bring to your communities in order to ensure that kids start the year in a very good place with their reading? So Paula, are you set to share your screen? Wonderful.
Yes, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about our summer reading program at SCLO Library. So far this summer, we have registered 98 babies and toddlers, 1,406 kids ages 3 to 12, 260 teens, and 388 adults for the Summer Reading Challenge. And that's more than we had all last summer, and it's only July. We've also provided a weekly free summer lunch for kids. And I'd like to say a huge thanks to the Center County YMCA for funding and making the lunches that we're able to distribute to kids, as well as we've had a magic show, a puppet show, live reptiles and bug shows, drumming classes, concerts, and more. And we are absolutely thrilled that the popular Read It, Watch It movie program partnership with the State Theater is back again this year, which hosts free movies every Wednesday at noon for kids and their families. And just this past week, we were able to host several fantastic didgeridoo programs all around the center region, including one at the SCASD Champs Camp and one at the Arboretum. So as you can see, hopefully, come on, computer. There we go. As you can see, I love to talk about our summer reading program, but maybe you're asking yourself, why do we do summer reading at all? One answer is that summer is SCLO's time to shine, particularly with the elementary school students. Sure, they use us during the school year, but summer is when we become the major hub of programs and activities that they can enjoy. But the biggest reason we do summer reading is to help kids avoid the summer slide. If students don't continue to read and learn over the summer, they will lose a lot of what they learned during the past school year. Several studies have shown that teachers often spend a good part of the beginning of the next school year reteaching students skills that they learned and then forgot over the summer months. Summer offers children a chance to explore subjects that they themselves are passionate about, both through books and by attending library programs. Our program encourages kids to read at least 20 minutes a day, which is the same thing that teachers expect their students to do during the school year. And since reading every day is key, our program also rewards kids who read every day for 3 weeks in a row. And you can actually, during our summer reading program, you can do that 3 times over the summer. Our Summer Quest program helps kids branch out of their comfort zones and try something new with a challenge to read 10 different book genres and complete a variety of fun activities at their homes and out in the community. And our team at SCLO is also ready to help make recommendations to families so that kids can find the books that are right for them. We also provide educational programs throughout the summer. We hosted a marine biologist and his graduate students from Penn State who presented a fascinating program about marine invertebrates, so that's coral and that kind of thing. Kids even got to interact with live specimens up close. And in July, we learned about habitats of the watershed from the fantastic Mandy of Millbrook Marsh. And thanks to the Center Foundation, kids will have the opportunity to enjoy a variety of music concerts by local and nationally recognized performers. Our hope is that through these programs, kids will keep learning and even discover something new that they're passionate about. One question we get every year, but even more so this year, is how much does it cost to participate? And I'm always proud to say that families can participate for free. Thanks to wonderful community partners, donations from local businesses, and support from our municipalities and their elected officials, we can offer this program to families at a time when free is especially appreciated. This program would not be possible without our community. The Center Foundation awarded SCLO with a Field of Interest grant to make all of the concerts and musical performances possible this year. And the Half Moon Inclusion and Diversity Alliance donated funds so that we could purchase 2 bicycles to use as a special summer reading prize to encourage kids to keep reading. Now, why are prizes important? Because some kids, and let's be honest, teens and adults too, need a little extra push to get them reading. I'll leave you with a short story tonight. One day when we were out in the classrooms doing summer reading presentations, a boy came up to us afterwards and he said, and honest to God, it's true. He said, I want to tell you something. I didn't like reading last year, but I really wanted to win that dragon. So I read every day last summer. I didn't win the dragon, but now I really like reading. And it's stories like that that make it all worth it. So thank you for your time. Are there any questions about summer reading?
Questions for library staff? Thank you so much. Continuing on, authority, board, and committee reports. Executive committee, Mr. Barlow.
Okay, there's not very much to say other than what's here, but I will note that we did have a visit. You might want to note the visit from a representative of Senator Corman to talk about redistricting, and also we had a lively discussion about procedures. That's all I have to add.
Questions for Mr. Barlow? Finance committee, Mr. Trevino.
Yes, I don't have anything to add beyond the summary that's already printed in your agenda.
Excellent. Human Resources did not meet. Their next meeting is Wednesday, August 3rd at 12:15. Parks Capital, Ms. Denini.
It was actually canceled.
Okay.
We didn't meet, it was canceled. There should be a notice.
Next meeting Thursday, September 8th, 2022. Public Safety Committee, Ms. Robb.
I think we talked about it. We voted on Fire Director Bear did the presentation on the specialized traffic unit. Thanks to everyone. And the other issue we talked about was with emergency management with Sean Kaufman, Penn State, and his organization, EMS, are working together on the new football schedule. So they will be meeting weekly and bi-weekly until they can get that all together. And I want to thank Walt Snyder for the update on the high-rise development downtown. So, and that's mine.
Any questions for Ms. Robb? Very good. Facilities Committee, Ms. Hartle.
Yes, basically, it's in your agenda. We reviewed the CIP and passed it on to executive. And we had updates on the hiring of the project manager and also on the education building phase 2 and Whitehall Road Regional Park. Everything is moving ahead, and I believe our next meeting is going to be a combined meeting with finance on the 18th. Is that correct? Is that no?
Sure.
Sounds great.
It's in the works.
Yes.
I just thought this, I knew we weren't doing it on August 2nd.
Yeah, I just need that confirmed.
Okay.
Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, Lucy did not meet. Their next meeting is Thursday, August 4th. Climate Action Sustainability Committee, Ms. Whitman.
Sure, I'd like to emphasize that everything that's reported in the agenda, that the devil is in the details. We're in the implementation phase right now, so I'll just emphasize that how the proposals are implemented is take a slightly different look at every municipality. So there'll be conversations with the board, your manager, the sustainability director will come out and start. And I would also like to just add that the Solar United Neighbors, the one that did the co-op last year, is thinking about launching another co-op next spring. That's it.
Any questions for Ms. Whitman? Parks and Recreation Governance meets this coming Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. We invite all. SLO Center Region Library Board. Next meeting is August 10th. Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority, their meeting on July 21st was canceled. Their next meeting is Thursday, August 18th. Any questions? Pam, please.
Mr. Chair, yes, I just wanted to update the group that the authority actually has moved its August 18th meeting to August 25th at the same time, 12:15 p.m. And that was to accommodate a bid extension that we're doing for the Millbrook Marsh Nature Center project. So we are running a legal ad to notify that, and we've updated all calendars.
Excellent, thank you, Pam. Other business, staff has provided a number of matters of record, or any of those staff wish to bring to the general forum's attention.
Nothing more.
Any questions on the matters of record? Okay. We continue to have our calendar and reference links. Anybody have anything else for the good of the cause? Hearing nor seeing none, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
I will say we're adjourned. Have a nice night.